Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, da.
Oh, I gotta keep that in now. I was gonna kick us off, but I think that just kicked us off. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the ScruffyMovies podcast. I'm Zach Wallace.
And I'm John Crocker.
And you just caught Crocker warming his voice up to begin our recording. I was just going to hop in and get to talking like how I normally do to intro the episode, but I think that was just too good of an introduction to not start with. So I think that's what I'm going to start with this week.
Leave it in. Leave it in.
So
just a little behind the scenes action.
Yeah, just a little bit, just a taste for what Crocker and I go through every week for you.
This podcast is just so labor intensive and demanding. I'll tell you what.
Exactly. That's you missed our 45-minute vocal session before that just happened. We definitely didn't just start recording and then start talking.
Not at all. Not us.
Well, this is going to be a great episode. It's one I'm very excited about. It's going to be talking about the Incredibles movies, which, of course, the first one came out in 2004 when we were kids, and then we just recently got Incredibles 2 last year. So a lot of stuff to get through here. We're also going to be doing a really cool halftime for you guys. I know I have a lot of stuff written down for my halftime, and I am actually pretty excited about my quick pitch this week as well. So I guess I'll kick it over to you to start off our incredible podcast.
Yeah, so The Incredibles is certainly one of my favorite animated movies, or a couple of animated movies of all time. And one random fact that I just kind of want to throw out there, because I think this is going to set the tone a little bit. The Incredibles 2 was the second highest grossing animated film of all time. Now, that blew my mind when I heard that. I would have thought that, like, the first couple of Toy Stories would be up there, that there would be more Shrek up there, that more, like, princess movies over the years would have been up there. Of course, the number one spot is solidly held down by Frozen, and that makes a lot of sense. But I guess it does kind of show you a little bit of the world we live in when it comes to movies, that it's almost like the newer the movie, the more money that it's going to make. Because if you were to take Snow White, the original Snow White from, what was that, like the 50s or something? And
I think it was even earlier than that. It was like
earlier than that.
20s and 30s.
If you were to adjust that for inflation, it, like, single-handedly would not only be the most, obviously highest grossing animated film, but it would be in the running for, like, highest grossing films ever. Mm-hmm. So I think that shows a bit of a peek sort of behind the curtain a little bit at the movie industry, when some of the more popular, what I would think are probably more popular than The Incredibles 2, again, like Toy Story, Shreks, things like that, didn't even, like, get close to making the amount of money this movie made. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the further in the future you get, the more movies they're going to make. It's just like it is an industry, it's a business, and they've sort of figured out that model,
Yeah, I think some of it just has to do with inflation. I mean, movie tickets just cost more now, so it seems like movies make a lot more money now, even though they might not really. But I think Incredibles 2 was just the perfect storm. Hollywood, and it seems like pop culture in general, is in an extreme nostalgia spiral right now. Anything 80s or 90s is all of a sudden cool again. They're bringing, like, everything back from our childhood, and couple that with the fact that superhero movies are probably the biggest, like, event movies going on right now. So now, not only do you have the nostalgia of being able to see these characters again you haven't seen since childhood, you get to see another superhero movie, which it's going to be different from Marvel and DC because it's not Marvel and DC. And I'm sure that Incredibles 2, like, going into it, I would be like, oh, they probably got stuff to say about Marvel and DC movies. I'm excited to see how this pans out. So I think it was just kind of the perfect storm of right time, right place to release Incredibles 2, and then it just blew up.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And this is one of those few movies that I guess Pixar in general has always kind of been good at, but it's a kids movie. It's an animated superhero movie but it has just enough adult themes that are just like under the surface that it truly is enjoyable, not just bearable for audiences of all ages. And I mean that when I say it, like all ages, and there's only been a few animated films like that I can remember. And most of them, to my knowledge, all the ones that are coming to top of mind, like Toy Story and Shrek and Finding Nemo and all of that, were Pixar, I believe.
Shrek is not. Shrek is
Shrek is
DreamWorks,
not.
but everything else you just said was.
Yeah.
But that's the only one. But yeah, Pixar is killer. I mean, Disney in general is killer about designing movies where they're like, we know kids are gonna like this. It's animated, so it's geared more like towards children, but the kids aren't gonna come see it by themselves. We need to put stuff in there for the grown-ups to enjoy. Otherwise, they're just gonna come out of it with a negative experience, and they'll be more likely to not come next go around when we release another movie. So Disney has always been killer about doing that. I mean, like when I was a kid to now, I feel like I've lost no interest in new Disney movies, if not gained more, because now I have an entirely new perspective to look at them through. It's not just the same like, oh, cool kid story. It is going into it with that like, well, what did they put in here for me? And like enjoying the story, but like really trying to get those nuggets out of being like, oh, wow, that was a reference to like this really old superhero comic that no way kids would know, or stuff like that. So I haven't lost any interest in Disney movies. If anything, I feel like I've only gained it because they are so good about doing that, making sure that everyone that wants to see it can.
Oh, totally. And when it comes to replayability, like when you do have a child that demands to see the same movie put on repeat for an entire day, like you would much rather it be The Incredibles than something, like, I don't know, the Teletubbies.
Oh yeah, no, that's like the Disney Junior stuff. Well, I will say Disney Junior just had it's within like the last year or two or something like that. They have a new TV show on Disney Junior called The Lion Guard, which is a sequel to the Lion King series of movies. It's about Simba's son. And so when they announced it, I was like, oh, cool, Disney. I didn't read the Disney Junior part. So I found it online and started to watch it. And I was like, man, this is like really for kids. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, that's why it's for like 4-year-olds.
Well, was it at least any good?
I mean, yeah, I only watched like the first episode, but it wasn't bad. I was just like, I don't really have any interest in coming back.
All right, so let's kick this over here into a true question that I think we might actually talk about for a bit. Of all the powers from all the Incredibles and their friends and the people they meet along the way, which power would you pick to have if you could pick one? Would you have the incredibleness of Mr. Incredible or the stretchiness of Elastigirl? What would it be?
Oh, I don't know. It always comes back to like, do you want to be invisible or like, do you want to be able to fly? Like that kind of age-old question of those two superpowers. I think probably I would want to be able to stretch, because really, if you could stretch as far as the eye could see, you could move places pretty fast. Like I could stretch my arm out, grab onto a tree and pull myself forward, and then use my like rubber legs to propel myself. And that's basically, I mean, you're kind of leaping with style, to take a quote from another Pixar movie, but more or less you can fly kind of. And also we've seen Elastigirl be able to like puff up and be a parachute and stuff like that. And I'm always like, every time I'm sitting on the couch and I'm really comfortable, I'm always just like, man, I want some water, but I really don't want to get up and get it. It would be so useful to a lazy man like me to just be able to stretch my hand and reach whatever I wanted.
That, that is probably the best argument I've ever heard for the elasticity, I guess, power is what it was.
Then also, you could eat as much as you want, get as fat as you want, doesn't matter. Just use your elastic body to shrink up. You're skinny all the time. You can eat whatever you want.
I guess in theory, it depends on how elastic you are. But if you're like super elastic, you would almost have like shape shifting abilities. Like you could elastic yourself into virtually any shape, right? If you could hold it, if you could hold that shape.
Yeah, that's actually something, a new character that was introduced last season on The Flash. His name's Ralph Dibny. He plays Elongated Man, and that's basically his power. He can stretch really far, but then he started to notice that, like what you were saying, his body was so elastic, he could form it into other people. So he's played other people on the show multiple times, just like walked on and like helped them complete missions by using his elastic powers to form his face differently.
And what did you say his name was again?
His superhero name?
His superhero name.
Elongated Man.
Really?
Yes.
That got past editing and the writers.
That's like he's from the comic books and stuff. And it's really funny because he had that name like in the old comic books whenever people were just like, this guy's really strong. He's a Superman. And, you know, it was like those old kind of names like Plastic Man and stuff like that. And so on the show, he's like, Elongated Man? What kind of name is that? So they kind of make fun of the fact that he is known as Elongated Man in the comic books.
You would absolutely have to like address that fact within moments of that name coming up in a TV show as serious as The Flash. So I'll take your name for it. I'm nowhere near caught up on The Flash.
Yeah.
But yes, I would expect like major joking and poking and prodding at that name.
Yeah, and he does play a bit of the comic relief on the show, so it fits in with his character pretty well.
Awesome. So I would definitely have to say that Violet's abilities, I mean, invisibility is cool, and that's definitely like a big part of it because that's sort of like a huge power that you get when you get all of her abilities. But being able to create force fields and like move people with, I guess, force, not the force, but some force, you know, I really think that would be nifty. And then just your ability to go invisible on top of that, I think compounds enough into that being better than your stereotypical sort of Mr. Incredible, Superman-y style powers or being super stretchy or super fast. Now, Jack, we don't know, you know, the baby, he could end up being like the most powerful superhero in that entire universe. We don't know yet. And I could see us in a couple of years from now or a few years from now revisiting this if there's another one made and say, oh, we definitely should have picked Jack's powers. And it was a close second with Frozone too, because I've always been like a huge Sub-Zero fan and being able to do the freezy stuff and everything that comes with it, like being able to transport yourself very quickly on ice and all of that. That would be really cool too, but you just can't beat like the force manipulation of force shields and force movement and invisibility and all of that.
Yeah, Frozone was actually the first one that came to my head because and they've even shown it like in the first movie, just like the water molecules in the air at all times basically gives him full manipulation of the world as he sees fit to use it. Like he can basically do whatever he wants for a good majority of the time. And it's kind of the same as with Elastigirl kind of reaching onto the tree and stretching yourself forward. He can basically fly, but he's just like ice skating on a rink that he's making at all times.
Yeah. It's not flight, but it's like
it's close.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of a name for it, but it's like he's creating his own bridge everywhere he goes.
Yeah. So he was my first one because I mean, like he could just do whatever he wants most of the time. I've always thought Frozone was really cool.
Awesome. So one thing about this movie that's always been interesting to me, and it's something that you notice in the first movie as well, is just the weird like setting and world that they live in. Like it's this strange mix of like the 1950s where everybody's driving around in like Bel Airs with huge fins on the rear, and you have old school like radios and TVs in the homes, but then they have like handheld computer devices and hover trains and all of this like futuristic technology. And I think that's like one setting that you can truly only do that well in an animated series. I mean, you could do that live action, and I know people have done that live action before, but you can't really cut as deep as they did with some of like the 1950s throwbacks and stuff unless you're doing it in animation.
Yeah, I think in animation, basically, like the styling is up to you. Whereas if you were to do it in live action, it would just seem like a person's a time traveler. That like if everything else is in the 50s, but you see somebody walking around like on their cell phone, you'd be like, well, I want to know about that person because this is clearly the 50s and they have an iPhone. Something's up with that person, even though maybe they're really not. It's just like the style the movie was going for. It's much more jarring to see it outside of an animated feature. And I'm glad you brought this up because that was actually something I had written down. This movie to me feels like it harkens back to the old 1950s movies, which is probably a reason why it was designed the way it was. But like the old, like the incredible 50-foot woman and stuff like that, like those old weird like science fiction-y type movies, I always felt like it harkened back to that era. Like if this movie was in live action, it could have totally come out in like 1954 and people would have flocked to the theaters to see it.
Yeah, totally. And it is strange too. I mean, I think a lot of it harkens back to like you were saying, but also like good old fashioned like family and family values and like that type of stuff too. Could have been one of the major reasons this movie sort of hit home with so many people. I mean, we were talking earlier about how it's like a kid's movie with adult themes in it. I mean, one of like the major themes of the movie is Mr. Incredible literally having to parent. Yeah. Like having to parent his kids and not being, very awesome at it at the beginning or very incredible, like that. And then when you have the kids asking the questions like, well, we're doing good, but good is illegal, and like, how do we address that? I mean, they're not going into this with super, super easy themes that any old child will be able to pick up. And I know that the argument could be made that as long as there's bright colors and fast movement, kids will watch anything. But I think the 1950s aspect solidifies that in a strange, weird way. Like when they're having that conversation about the good versus it being illegal, and they're in a 1950s hotel, eating dinner on a 1950s table with chairs, and the TV in the background is straight out of the old days. Like it feels a little bit more real or something. I don't know. Do you know where I'm going with that? Does that make any sense at all to you?
Yeah, I totally agree with like the family values of the 50s and everything like that. I think even subconsciously, people like us, or just people in general who have seen like Back to the Future or just like know about the 50s, I feel like the 50s just gives off the vibe of like interesting stories were told here, but under the assumption of everything is okay. Like it had very interesting themes going on, like Back to the Future. Marty McFly comes back, but everything seems just like normal 50s suburbia. Or oh gosh, there was one that was just in my head. But basically, I really like the facade of everything's fine, except it's not really. And that's where I think you can get a lot of interesting storytelling from that 50s type era. And I think that's something that Incredibles does very well, because a big plot of the movie is them trying not to like tell the world who they are. They're in hiding. Everything's fine, but it's not really. And that kind of leads back to the whole 50s feeling of how they staged the movie and drew the movie, basically animated the movie.
Yeah. And was that, I guess that would have been the same, like about the same time period, a lot of the Cold War stuff and all that was going on too, where like in reality in America, everyone was living out their life and everything was fine, but not really. Like at any moment, the sirens may go off and you may have to seek shelter under your flimsy wooden desk,
Right. And I mean, Stand By Me, which I believe takes place in the 50s or 60s. But I mean, that whole movie is just like kids walking on the train tracks, and it's just like a fun kid adventure. But then when you really start to like dig into the movie, it's like all these really complex themes of like death and friendship and growing up, and things are changing and all this stuff. But on the outside point of view, it looks like kids are just walking down train tracks having a great time, but that is not what the movie is about at all.
Is that the one where they find the dead body?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, and I would like to see as well in the Incredibles universe, and I know we might be giving way too much credit to the Incredibles.
A dead body?
No. Yes. I want the children to stumble across a dead body as the plot of the next movie.
I want to Stand By Me, but for Incredibles 3.
For Incredibles. Gosh, where was I even going with this? Oh yeah, I want to know if they were like, are they frozen in time? Was it like, are they in current times, but in the Incredibles universe, the fashion and the trends of sort of how they made cars and technology, that it kind of get frozen in that 1950s aesthetic, or did they, or are they in the 1950s right now and they're just crazy, a lot further advanced than we are, so they can have access to all of this technological wonder? And if they were not frozen in time, or if that sort of 50s theme was not frozen in the world, then that means back when Mr. Incredible and all of them were younger and like really out on the streets and were, the superheroes before they had to go underground and everything, that would have been like the 30s. And maybe even you could say like back to the 20s. I want to see that. I want to see like 1920s, like zoot suits and speakeasies in the Incredible world.
Well, yeah, when they're interviewing them in the very first Incredibles movie, that footage is old, like very old footage. And so I don't know if I would say just from that inkling that they are living in the 50s, but it's like this organization that they work with, being a superhero, provides them with technological advances that just regular society is not privy to yet.
Yeah, it doesn't have access to. That makes sense. Because a lot of most of the technology you see in the movie, and I haven't seen the first Incredibles in a long time, but what I'm thinking of is the handheld dealio so that you can see what Jack's up to. And then, the car and the bike, and really anything, I guess, that they have their hands on can be as advanced as it needs to be for that moment. Especially like Mr. Incredible's car that is styled after an old like Aston Martin or something, but can fly to you and has autopilot and turn into a boat and all this and all that. So I guess that would make sense. And even the guy that erases the memory, very Men in Black-esque, what was his name? I can't remember his name.
Will Smith.
Yeah, yes, that one. But anyway, maybe you're right. Maybe it is just the fact that they're superheroes that gives them access to that, and the rest of the world is still truly in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, and I think just affording, it's kind of the way X-Men put Days of Future Past in there to clear up all their continuity errors of just being like, it's time travel. If something's messed up, it's just because time travel. I think The Incredibles just has afforded itself that ability to be like, oh, well, they're superheroes. They have this technology. Everything else can look like the 50s, but they can have this technology where they can like see each other on what appears to be a cell phone, but it's not. They're just superheroes, so they get access to that, but nobody else has it yet. So I think it's presented itself in a very positive way of doing that, because nothing in the movies I've ever felt like, oh, come on, really? That's not for them. The movies have always been very good about being like, okay, and this they have, and this they have, and this they have, and but just me as an audience member accepting it.
And that's the beauty of like this particular world, right? Because they could step out with some Tony Stark style like holograms that they're throwing around with their hands and moving it, across the room, and it would not come off as strange. I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. They have that. Move on to the next thing. Like, I don't know what it would take in that movie for me to be like, all right, guys, pump the brakes.
Yeah. Now we're getting a little crazy here.
Yeah, exactly. Your car that just turned into a boat was totally, believable.
But
But
when you took out that iPod, I started questioning the believability of this animated children's movie.
exactly. In talking about tech, one thing that made me really happy was that we get to see another Edna scene. And she actually played a decently large part. Edna was her name, correct?
Yeah, Edna Mode.
That's it. And the baby suit scene,
Mhm.
where Mr. Incredible brings the baby over. She figures out that it's got powers and then creates sort of the awesome fire retardant suit, to help track him when he goes invisible and into another dimension and all of that. And to me, she was one of my favorite characters of the first movie. And I was super excited that they brought her back. I would have been very, very upset if I made it all the way through The Incredibles 2 and they didn't at least give a heavy nod to Edna. But the fact that she played such a huge role made me happy.
Yeah, I agree. Pixar is always really good about, and this is kind of seen more in the main story of Incredibles 2 with Elastigirl, but basically Pixar is famous for their first movie being their first movie, and then the second movie focuses on like the sidekick or the character who was like action adjacent. Like they were there, but they were just outside of the main action. So like Elastigirl, for instance, takes over Incredibles 2. Mater, the story was about him in Cars 2. Instead of finding Nemo 2, it was about finding Dory, and it was all about Dory. So I agree that I think Pixar is really good about bringing those kind of characters back. And so I think being able to explore those characters more like Edna is something that Pixar is really good at, and making sure they're like fully fleshed out people and not just, oh, they're there for a joke in the first movie. Like they give them stuff to do.
And what a cool thing to do, like to be responsible for the super suits,
Mm-hmm.
like no capes. And my favorite was the when they have this sort of subplot of the designers, where Edna's like, and I get rights to be your exclusive designer, and she calls out the person who designed the other one by name.
Mm-hmm.
It's like she truly lives in this world of designing super suits, and she's good at it, right? And she can do it in next to no time, and she set everyone up that's have ever been anybody in the superhero world with their suit. Like to me that was just a really, really cool character to add, and I'm glad to see that they've done it so well and she's become as popular as she is.
I agree. I think she's definitely one of the breakouts. Maybe she'll even be the main character of Incredibles 3.
Well, she was themed after a real life person. Like
Yeah,
there,
the her look and everything. Yeah, I
yeah,
can see the lady's face, but I cannot think of her name.
me either. And I think she was one of the big fashion people in Hollywood or something, like a costume creator or something like that for movies.
Yeah, yeah, I can see her face in my head so clearly, but I cannot think of her name.
I kind of like in my head when I picture Edna, the cartoon character, and then I'm like, what would that translate to? It would definitely be the person that I can't remember her name from Austin Powers. She was
Frau Farbishina.
yes. That's the one.
Yeah, the lady who just screams at everything.
And is the mother of the child with Dr. Evil.
Yeah, Scott Evil.
Scott Evil.
Yeah,
That's his name. That I envision like someone that looks like her when I think of what Edna would translate to in real life.
yeah. I mean, it's probably not far from off. I mean, if they ever, it would be cool to see a live action Incredibles, even if it was just like a short or something. It'd be cool to see them translate it for like 5 minute, like a 5 minute Blu-ray extra feature or something. That would be cool to see.
Yeah,
Have
totally.
her play Edna would totally make sense.
Just a live action Incredibles in general.
Yeah, I'd be down with it. Although I think that by it being animated, it's distinguishing itself from like the big Marvel and DC movies. If it went live action, I'm sure it would do well in the theaters, but I don't know how well like the audience of fans of the Incredibles movies would respond to it.
Yeah, I was thinking more like your short theory, or maybe even just like a really well done fan film, you know.
Well, who knows? I mean, Disney making their entire catalog into live action now. We'll just give it another 20 years and maybe we'll get one.
Yeah, they really are. They're bringing everything over into live action, aren't they?
Yeah, everything. The Lion King movie's coming out, and that doesn't even have a person in it. It's not even technically live action. I saw an interview where they're like, we've been very careful to not call The Lion King live action, because it's not. It's just a photorealistic animation, basically. I mean, it's all CGI.
Yeah, it's going to be like 100% CGI, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what does that sound mean?
That sound means it's halftime. Woo-hoo! So halftime is a segment, if you haven't listened before, where Crocker and I just take a couple minutes out of the conversation that we're having to talk about some of the more recent movies we've seen or trailers we've seen, movies we're excited about, news that's come out of the past week or so. And also we've been doing a digital code giveaway during this time. So this code's giveaway, to keep with the Disney Pixar theme we're going for, is going to be one of the newest Disney Pixar movies to just come out, and that's going to be the movie Coco. This movie is really good if you haven't seen it yet. It is amazing. I cried like a baby at the end, and I'm not ashamed to admit it because Disney is really good about doing that. So if you want to enter to win the digital code, all you got to do is comment below with the code word guitar, or DM me that at ScruffyMovies on Instagram. Just send me a direct message with the code word guitar, and you'll be entered to win a free digital copy of Coco.
Awesome. That's the one that's like the Day of the Dead movie, right?
Yes, and it is incredible.
I have not seen that one.
Very good. You should enter to win.
I should. Totally doesn't work. So this week, there's been a few things I have seen that have made me very excited about the movies that are to come. First and foremost, and I know that this one is probably on your list too, which is why I'm jutting in here to say it first. Hobbs and Shaw.
Yes.
Fast and Furious universe is getting its first spin-off movie, I guess is what you would say. They've had some mini-sodes in the past, but they've really been those have been really about setting up kind of the main plot with the main characters. And this is going to be the first time that we see Hobbs and Shaw, two of the, like, not necessarily crew members, but definitely big people in the Fast and Furious franchise, get out there and do their own thing. I'm assuming it will end up being a buddy cop adventure comedy. Super pumped about it. Love me some Rock. Love me some other guy that I can't remember his name.
Jason Statham. That's
the one, the unkillable dude. So that'll be a good movie. Secondly is the Zombieland 2 poster that came out that got the internet all excited. I have not seen much about the second Zombieland at all, as far as like even a teaser or anything like that. I could be wrong. They could have dropped something along those lines by this point. But so far we see the poster, and that has basically told the entire internet that it is happening and has made a lot of people very excited. And then finally is the Apollo 11 documentary that's coming out, which is weird that I know we would even go into the documentary space on this podcast, but I'm a huge space nut. So the new Apollo 11 documentary apparently has some like unseen footage. I mean, all new documentaries claim that, but it looks really awesome, and it seems to be done by people that know what they're doing. So super pumped. And really those are my three heavy hitters for this week's halftime.
Yes, Zombieland 2 finally happening. They actually just started filming it last week, so there hasn't been a teaser or anything dropped. Basically, they just dropped the poster to be like, hey, we're actually doing it this time, instead of it just being like, oh yeah, we might do it since 2009.
Yeah, so, we're planning on it.
Do what?
Yeah, we're planning on it, and then that be it.
Yeah, and then that's it. So I'm glad that came out. That one was actually not on my halftime, so I'm glad you brought that up. I totally wasn't even thinking about that. First up on my halftime is, of course, also Hobbs and Shaw. I am very excited for this movie. I love The Rock. I've loved The Rock since I was a kid watching him on WWF, and I saw a meme one time but I've just taken it to heart, and I always just think about this whenever a new Rock movie's coming out. I feel like I've signed a blood oath to Dwayne Johnson to go see any new movie he has coming out at all. Like, I'll just go. If it has The Rock, I'll go. Like, I know what I'm getting into when you say The Rock's in it. Like, I know I'm like, oh, probably gonna be a good movie. So this Hobbs and Shaw looks incredible. I feel like Fate of the Furious, which we talked about a little bit in our Fast and Furious podcast, got a little too wild for me, but only for the reason that this crew, Dom's crew specifically, has never been trained to be like international spies. They were street racers that were jacking stuff off the back of 18-wheelers. So the fact that they're keeping this extreme kind of action and stuff the franchise is known for, but giving it to two people that have been expertly trained in doing this is totally believable to me. And I am A-okay with whatever they want to do. And I mean, now they're making Idris Elba's got friggin' superpowers. He's bulletproof and has super strength. And so, but I'm all in. I don't even care. I saw a lot of people being like, oh, do you remember when Fast and Furious was about street racing? I don't care. I'm in it for bulletproof Idris Elba having to fight The Rock and Jason Statham at the same time. I'm in. There is one thing I will say about Hobbs and Shaw, and I really hope they address it in the movie, because now they're making Shaw more of a main character. He's never technically gotten any blowback. I mean, he killed Han. Like, he murdered Han. It wasn't like an accident or like the gun misfired or something. He nailed him with a car and then blew him up.
Yep.
And that's never really been addressed. It's just always been like, oh yeah, hey, he's a good guy now. Cool, thanks guys. So I hope now that he's one of the two main characters, they kind of address that more, and hopefully they will. But I am really looking forward to Hobbs and Shaw. My next one is Birds of Prey just released a teaser showing off some of the actors and actresses and their roles as they're coming out. And I have kind of it's not really an inside joke. It's more of a, I'm just sad about it now. But I don't believe a word DC says about any live action movie they're doing until I see something like what Birds of Prey released and I know that it's shooting. Then I believe that it's happening, because DC is famous for just being like, oh, you liked Harley Quinn? Okay, 6 Harley Quinn movies. And everyone's like, what? And then so now one of them is actually being made. And it does look pretty good. I'm actually excited for Birds of Prey. I don't know who's directing it. I think it might be
Kathy Yan.
Who is it?
Kathy Yan.
Okay, that's fine with me. I was going to say I think it might be David Ayer, because when it was first announced, David Ayer was attached to direct it, who also directed Suicide Squad, and I was not excited about that. So I'm glad that it's somebody different. But yeah, Birds of Prey looks really good. Also, this isn't a trailer or anything that got released, but it's something that's also been long in development hell. The Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series of books that everybody in elementary school read when we were kids and everyone was freaked out by them, is getting an anthology movie made, like big theatrical movie, produced by Guillermo del Toro, who is famous for like making his monsters extremely scary and like just very good monsters in general. He's producing it, and they just released a poster with just a shot from one of the books of one of the monsters, but it's live action basically, and it looks incredible. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to really freak me out. And also, the day we're recording this, it's Super Bowl night tonight. And of course, with the Super Bowl comes a lot of rumors of what trailers we might see, where we are confirmed to get a Hobbs and Shaw, at least commercial, which is probably just going to be some recut footage of the trailer that we just got. We're also been confirmed to get an Avengers Endgame spot with some new footage, hopefully. Very excited about that. And we've also been confirmed for a Toy Story 4 trailer. And then, of course, rumors are just going out. People are saying we might get one for It Chapter 2, Aladdin, Stranger Things 3. Basically, I saw an article that said Disney bought like 2 minutes of time, and it's going to be split up in between like 30-second spots. So they have 4 30-second spots, and the only thing they've announced for sure is Avengers Endgame. So nobody else really knows what else is going to come out. People, like I said, are speculating a Toy Story 4, Aladdin, Dumbo, like all that kind of stuff, but nobody knows for sure. So everyone's just kind of really excited about the Super Bowl trailers we could get tonight.
Yeah, and if they broke them down into 30-second segments, that really wouldn't give a lot of these trailers justice either, I feel like.
Well, normally what they do, at least what I've seen of the past couple years, is movie studios will buy that 30 seconds, and then at like second 29, they'll put up a text graphic that says, go to Warner Brothers YouTube page right now to see the full trailer. So they'll drop the full trailer immediately after that little 30-second clip aired, but that little 30 seconds was all they wanted to afford, and then they drive people to go watch the full big thing.
Yes, in the advertiser's never-ending journey to get people to leave the television medium and go to the online medium to actually consume the content.
Yes.
Yep.
But that I'm very excited for tonight, because I don't know. Normally there's a pretty good list of what we know, like some things that are coming out, but I don't know what we could get tonight. Could be a crazy mix of things. I mean, who knows? So I'm really excited. I'm also just really excited for the Super Bowl in general. It's the only sporting event I watch every year.
Yeah, this year I was just thinking that I haven't really kept up with pro ball at all, so this would be the one of any that I could probably skip through if I was going to skip one. But now you've got me freaking excited about commercials. And to the people out there that don't know, we are literally marketers for a living, so commercials get us excited.
Yeah.
In a strange way that doesn't appeal to most people.
Yeah, even now, like I'll watch, I mean, you can watch good commercials and be like, oh, that was a good commercial. But if I watch a commercial that I don't like, I'm like, oh, why did I not like that? What did they do wrong that didn't appeal to me as a consumer? And so now I'm like breaking it down in my head, all these different ways that this commercial upset me.
Speaking of something you just mentioned not long ago that did not appeal to me as a consumer, was that you will go see any movie The Rock is in. And I must say that has gotten better in recent years. He's definitely doing better. But The Rock has been in some movies that I would definitely skip over. He's been in at least 3 like babysitter style movies, I believe.
Well, I didn't not say that some of the movies were stinkers. I mean, the Hercules that came out was not very good, but I was there A1 day one. I don't care about the movies. I'm there supporting my boy.
Supporting your boy. Yeah, I'm definitely drinking The Rock's Kool-Aid. I don't know where you got your cup full, but it has been consumed for sure.
Oh yeah, no, there's not like if he's in it, I'm there.
I just feel like he's that guy in Hollywood that like the minute a script comes in, he just says, yep, let's do it. Let's rock and roll. I don't have anything to do that month.
Yeah, like he just had a new TV show to come on called The Titan Games, and I've been watching it because he's in it. I tried to watch his HBO show called Ballers, and I just couldn't get into that one. So that's like the one thing he does that I don't watch.
You know, he travels around with an entire gym. He brings an entire like workout gym with him, and he calls it like the Iron Paradise or something. I've only seen this because I follow him on Instagram, but it's literally like it's as large as like a circus tent. You know, it's like a huge fabric tent that he gets set up with an actual like pallet foundation in it everywhere he goes, all over the world. And inside of that is where he sets up all of his workout equipment, all of the home gym type stuff that he needs. I mean, literally, it's the size of like a small town gym, like that people will get memberships and go to. It's that large, and he travels around with it just for himself. Think about the sheer weight that is. Like all of those dumbbells, all of those plates being carried around with you everywhere you go, all over the world.
He needs it, Crocker.
I know. And my favorite thing is when I hate going back to Instagram, but he'll post pictures of, and he'll be like, it's cheat day on my diet. And he will have not short of like 70 sushi rolls in front of him. Like my stomach would literally burst halfway through that.
Yeah, but he has like 8 pizzas and like 3 pans of cookies. And he's like, oh man, can't wait for this cheat day.
Exactly. Yeah, collects cookies all week long for the cheat day on the weekend.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you get paid to look the way you do, no slipping, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm indoctrinated to Dwayne Johnson. Whatever he makes, I'm there. A1 day one.
To take this back over to The Incredibles a little bit, one thing that we saw in the first movie was like the coming out of retirement and the will I fit into my super suit like type of stuff. We really didn't get a lot of that in this film,
Yeah,
like
I agree. I had some problems with the second one, actually, and I enjoyed the second one, but one of the reasons why I liked the first one so much was because it was about the entire family having to use their powers to stop this man, whereas in the sequel, I felt like it was just a lot of like Elastigirl, 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 while flashing back to Bob Parr being a father. And then like the last 30 minutes is when the family came together to be superheroes. And like I understand. I mean, I like Elastigirl's character. I liked the entire plot of the movie, but Incredibles is about the family. And when you isolate one character from the family to make the movie specifically about them, and you can argue that the first movie is about Mr. Incredible at first, but it's like out of an hour and like a 2-hour movie, the first 20 minutes are Mr. Incredible by himself, and then the next hour and 40 minutes are the family with him. Whereas I feel like in Incredibles 2, it was an hour and 40 minutes of Elastigirl, and then the last 20 minutes is the family. And I felt like it was just kind of off balance from what I wanted to see. I wanted the family dynamic. I wanted them to be fighting together as superheroes, but we just didn't really get that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree 100% with that analysis. I think that they did a good job at flashing between the two. Now, I agree 100% that I did not like the fact they split them up, that it was one story is happening at home and then another story is happening out here at this new job where we're going to make superheroes likable again by Elastigirl. But at the same time, I feel like all of my favorite parts of that movie are when they flashed back to Mr. Incredible trying to be a stay-at-home dad. Like all of the best parts of the movie happened on that side of things, or when the children were alone. Like everything that happened, which I guess was really moving the big plot forward, everything that happened with Elastigirl, it was just kind of blah and kind of bland. Like it was not that exciting what she was out there doing. When she was fighting the guy with the goggles, like you could see that coming a million miles away. You could really see the writing on the wall as far as who the bad person was from the very get-go with that movie. So, yeah, I agree that it would have been a much stronger movie if the family stayed together, but I don't think they focused on Elastigirl too very much. I think you would be surprised at actually how little time was spent away.
That's funny. That's you and I have the same opinion, but about the opposite plots.
Yeah. There you go.
I like the Elastigirl part, but I thought the family stuff was just kind of like, I was like, come on, be superheroes. And so you and I have the same opinion on the movie of we need the family to be together, just on flipped story points.
Yeah, totally. Which might be a perfect segue into what would you expect to see in your Incredibles movie, Zach?
Okay, so quick pitch. I'm actually really excited about this one. It's something it's one of those things where you're like, oh, that'd be a cool movie. But then like for this episode, I actually sat down and started to think about it. And I think it would be actually a really cool movie. So continuing with the trend of taking tertiary characters and making them main characters in the movies, this movie will not focus on the Incredibles. Instead, it's going to be a movie about Frozone and his family. Now, the plot of the movie is going to be Frozone and his teenage daughter, who she does not have powers as of yet. They don't really know how to connect with each other. He's trying to connect with her, but he can't really. And of course, we still see the Incredibles. You know, Frozone goes and talks to Mr. Incredible about how he just can't seem to connect with her and all this stuff. So there is still that like connection with the Incredibles. We still see the Incredibles in it, but it focuses on Frozone's family. So one night, I'm going to have the daughter figure out through an accident, basically, that she does have superpowers. They just haven't manifested in a way she thought they would. What the daughter can do is time travel. And so because of that, because Frozone's in there trying to like talk to her and stuff, and she starts freaking out and she's like, just leave me alone. I wish we were back when I was a kid and you weren't even here. You were off being a superhero. I wish I was a kid again. Stuff, whatever that like that is, he is holding on to her shoulder. And so basically her and him transport back in time to when she was a kid, when superheroes were like reigning supreme and everything like that. And so it's really going to be a story of this time lost father and daughter. And I think that we need to go to a bunch of different time periods. I think that something needs to happen when they're in the past. She doesn't know how to harness her power. She finally figures out how to do it, but maybe we have a villain who sees her do it. He figures out a way to harness it himself. And so we have like two competing timelines of people. And so basically something happens in the past. They go back into the present. All of the superheroes are dead. Syndrome's won. Syndrome's like controlling the world now. So all this stuff is going down. And at the same time, we get a really intimate story between a father and daughter finally bonding with each other and realizing that they are much stronger together than they are apart.
I love it. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think Frozone hasn't gotten his due in these movies. And I think we can still have the Incredibles in it and everything, but I think that would just be a very interesting movie to focus on his family.
But we absolutely have to get loads and loads of comic relief from his wife because she always yells in from the other room.
I feel like it'd be really funny if no matter what timeline happens, she's exactly the same.
Yes.
Like nothing changed her.
Yes.
She's like every timeline they open their door and she's in there like in apocalypse wear or like whatever's going on. And she's like, where do you two think you've been? Like she's the same in every reality.
Yes. I absolutely love it. Did we ever see her? I feel like we saw her in the first movie. Like we saw her.
No, we never. I still don't think we've seen her. I don't think we've seen her at all.
Yeah, totally got to make her be the comic relief character if that movie happens.
Oh, for sure.
Awesome. So for me, I think the biggest unanswered question, or not the biggest unanswered question, the biggest sort of plot that I would like to see played out, and the biggest question I have right now for like where we sit in the Incredibles universe is, what will Jack Jack become? Jack Jack to me is the key to the rest of the universe. Like his character could become and could do anything. As I alluded to before, he could theoretically come out as the most powerful being in the universe at this moment. And now to go back to what you were just saying a little bit, if Frozone's wife like isn't a superhero, then that would explain why it took the daughter until her teenage years to figure out that she had powers, because she had like half the potency, right? Mm-hmm. So it would then suggest that that's why the Incredibles kids discovered their powers earlier. But it could also mean that when two superheroes breed, there's a percent chance of a percent chance of a percent chance that you get just some like incredibly powerful being. Mm-hmm. Enter Jack Jack. I think that a Jack Jack story would be great. Now, how do you do that? I don't know. I think that naturally everyone's going to have to grow up a little bit, because you have to, in order to introduce Jack Jack as a character that has a problem or a challenge or must do something that would make a movie, then he has to be to a point at least where he may not be in complete control of his powers, but like he's old enough that he can communicate and know what's going on, and like not just be a baby that's giggling and sneezing and doing that kind of stuff, which would automatically put like Violet in college, probably, to deal with all of the college problems that come with that. Would probably make the son, what's his name, Dash would probably make Dash like in later high school, or at least high school. So he'll probably be like a jock at that point, fastest guy on the track team who catches every pass, on the football team. That type of thing is kind of how I see him playing out. And one sort of thing that happens that we haven't really played out in the universe yet is, much like Edna makes all of the superhero costumes and outfits, we have yet to see like who makes a lot of their hardware. So we know that Mr. Incredible has a car. He has an awesome car. We know that he has, or Elastigirl has, at least in the past, had like a motorcycle. So I want to see Jack need something, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a visor like you see on Cyclops or someone like that to control the laser beams. I don't know, but he would maybe need a piece of technology that would allow them to introduce a Edna type character that is more of a Q from the Bond series, where it's the gadget guy, where it's like, here's your new spy mobile, here's your laser goggles, here's this, here's that. I would love to see them play someone out along those lines. And in general, I would just like them to continue showing more people that have new, cool abilities. That was one of my favorite things about The Incredibles 2, is you get sort of that like B team list of superheroes where you have the guy that, like, the reflux guy that literally just barfs up lava. Like, that was great. I loved that. I thought that was someone thinking outside of the box of like, what hilarious, probably not very useful superpower could we put into this movie. I just want to see more of that type of stuff. I think it would be great if Jack, because he may realize he's the most powerful being in the universe, like, could he be tempted by, I'm going to say the dark side, because it's the dark side. Is he going to be tempted by the dark side? That's where I want to see it go. I want a story of Jack with technology, more people using more powers, and potentially have him walk the line of becoming a villain.
Okay, two things. And first, I really like that idea. I think that it would present a very interesting story to just have the Incredibles be like, oh, Jack has been able to handle himself since he was a baby. He doesn't need our help to handle him anymore. So they just focus more on Violet and Dash, whereas Jack, who's now, I'm picturing like an elementary school kid, is like, no, like, I need you guys, but he can't just come out and say that. So maybe Mr. Incredible's like tech thing breaks, and so he's like, take this to this address and get it fixed for me after school. And Jack's like, but Dad, I need to talk to you. And he's like, just, would you please? And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. And he goes, and that's where he sees like the tech guy, who I think it would be really funny if it was the exact like identical twin brother of Edna Mode, but his name's like Edgar Mode or something like that. And he's like the tech guy.
Yep.
And he's getting shaken down by criminals or something. And so Jack's like, this is my chance to prove to my parents, like this can be my cry for help. This can be like, hey guys, I just fought these villains. Pay attention to me. I deserve attention. But instead he gets wrapped up in this big like conspiracy plot. And I mean, who knows what the plot could be, but Jack becomes a target. And instead of going back home, he's like, this is my chance to prove myself. And so he goes full force into the problem. And so that, and that out of accident ends up showing his parents like, oh, he does need our help. Let's go help him. And so he becomes like the new Mr. Incredible in the first movie, who's facing the problem on his own. And then the family has to come rescue him. It's the same, but Jack.
Yep. Love it. I love it. I'm telling you, dude, they should just ring us up anytime they want to make a new movie and be like, hey guys, what are your ideas?
I mean, we got two right now. We have an Incredibles 3 and a Frozone Disney Plus television show.
Yes. Exactly.
We're ready to go. We've got your next $1 million right here. And all you got to do is put our names on it. We're good.
Well, did we miss anything? Was there anything else that you wanted to hit on with The Incredibles?
Not that I can think of. It's nothing that would have sparked a conversation, but I do remember playing the Incredibles PlayStation 2 video game, like 1 entire Christmas break one time, and it was a very good video game, and I loved it a lot. I wrote it down because I remember liking the video game a lot, but I don't know what we would have talked about it.
Oh, I could probably come up with something on video games, but I have never played that one. I'll have to check it out.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Scruffy Movies podcast. Once again, make sure if you want to win your free digital copy of Coco, all you got to do is enter the code word guitar below into the comments on this YouTube video, or send me a direct message in Instagram at ScruffyMovies with the code word guitar, and you'll be entered to win a free digital copy of Coco. Please follow us on Instagram at ScruffyMovies.
And Crockalicious.
We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We got another really cool one coming up next week for you, and we will see you all then.
Bye.